Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Optimized E-commerce podcast. I'm Tanner Larson, your host for this series, and I'm joined by a very special guest. This is actually really cool. He's one of the first external guests we've had on the show. As you guys know, we normally do a podcast with one of the 60 different team members that work with Build, Grow, Scale on our optimization stuff. But so Kevin is actually quite unique. And it's Kevin Urrutia. Is that right? Did I say it right?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep.
So I've been practicing that for about 3 seconds now, so we're doing good. But anyway, Kevin has done a lot of stuff. He owns Voy Media, and he's been in the e-com space for a while. He's got 3 different brands, one of which I want to talk about today is Chester Travel. So we're going to get into this. Now, the cool thing about Chester Travels, well, he basically made his life harder when he picked an e-commerce product to sell. And we'll talk about that in a second. He's like, hey, how can I make my life as difficult as possible to be successful in the e-commerce space? And he did it. So he did, about 1.5 million in 12 months. And the really exciting thing is he also went from 0 to 60,000 uniques in organic traffic. Now, if you've been in the e-commerce space for any length of time, you realize that e-commerce stores and organic traffic very seldom go together. Most people are totally reliant on paid media. And that's really why I wanted to have Kevin on here just to talk to us about how a store can actually do that and generate such a massive level of organic traffic. So Kevin, thank you so much for being on here. And why don't we start with a little bit of background on you and kind of, how you found your way into e-com.
Yeah, thanks, Tanner, for having me. So yeah, my name is Kevin Urrutia, and my background is in computer science. So I went to college in upstate New York in Binghamton for CS. So I was doing computer science for about a long time, and then I went out to California, San Francisco. So I was working for Mint.com, Zarly, really into it, doing tech stuff. But during this whole time, I was really big into startups. Like this was like 10 years ago, and moving to California, San Francisco, that was like the tech mecca. And that's where I wanted to go. And so throughout college, I was like doing stuff, building things. And I was always like building projects. I guess like people call it like side startups or just like things. And even in college, I had like my own web development agency. And I was like actually doing like iPhone apps and web apps and all this crazy stuff. Yeah. And it's interesting because at this time, I was like, kind of like people ask, like for my web development agency, what I was doing is going to Craigslist. It's really big. I was just like emailing people to be like, hey, like I'm a computer programmer in college. I can probably charge cheaper than maybe other web development agencies. And I just wrote a script in Ruby that would just scrape Craigslist and then just like automatically do it. It's so crazy because like at the time I was like, I didn't even know this is like cold emailing. I was like, and it's still for my own personal Gmail. And I was just like, oh, that's like thinking about it now. I'm just like, I probably should have done that because it's like, like not the best way. But out in California, I was doing, just like I said, building things. I was like competing on hackathons, which is like, I'm not sure people have done this, but programmers, it's like you basically for 48 hours, you kind of just program them something like a random idea. So I'm always like building things and we won one. And really one of the things when I was like building all these projects is I never knew how to like get traction or just sort of like, how do you get traffic? I think that was always like a mystery to me at that time because I was so big into like programming and the tech space at that time was probably heard about it like, hey, if you build it, they will come. Like if you have a great product, and people just find you, right? And that's kind of like what I believed in because that's like, it's like anything. When you read it so much, you kind of just like instill that belief that you're like, yeah, like this is it. And obviously not true, right?
Not true.
Obviously not true, right? Yeah, it's not true. And that's when I realized like, okay, like I'm building all this stuff, but like no one's finding my stuff. Like, how do I get traffic? And then that's when I start to look like how to get free traffic. And it's like, you go into these like rabbit holes of like SEO and you go into these like black hat forums, like, okay, what is SEO? So that's kind of like how I started doing it. And really I started doing SEO, at least in this sort of space, was when I was at Zarly. We're trying to get traffic. And I was just like, I got to find a way to like get us traffic. And, I was building all these like sub pages and like local pages for like the local services we were making. So that's kind of how I got into SEO and really how I started doing that. And then once I left that company, I came back to New York. That's where I am right now. I started a cleaning company, so maid service. And really here was when I learned a lot about organic SEO and local SEO. This was like 5-6 years ago. And probably now people we see like Google Maps has all like those local listings. 5-6 years ago, this was like not there. Correct, and then I saw that and I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity to optimize for that. So at that time, like Moz, SEO Moz, Rand Fishkin was like the biggest like SEO blog. So I learned a lot from just like reading that stuff in like Search Engine Journal, all like these like podcasts of like SEO. So that's how I started doing it. And for the Made company, which is called Made Sailors, we were able to go to the top. And then that's when I first saw like the potential of SEO. And I was like, whoa, like you're just getting so many customers that just want the product. And it's like the keywords, actually people like looking for Made Service NYC. It's like they're looking for a service right now. And that's what I started doing a lot more SEO. And then I started my outdoor gear company. So for the Made company, for example, we still have that now. And one of the biggest realizations that I've made for SEO was, I think I read it somewhere, was that like, think about like the top 10 spaces on Google as like real estate, and you want to control that space because people only see the top 2 or 3. So for the Made company, I was just like, oh, there's other companies that are ranking like at page 2 and they're not that good. How can I acquire those companies and then rank them up to own like the top 10? So that's what I did. Then I purchased 3 other cleaning companies in that same space and then rank them up. So now when you search for like Made Service NYC, you see three of the 10 companies are my companies. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever company you can go to, just call me. Yeah. Which is like in the beginning, it was so funny because they were calling, we're still picking up the phone. So if you do like a local business, it's very like call driven because people want to talk to somebody. Even for like e-commerce, I still think like phone numbers are important because people still love talking to somebody. But it was so funny in the beginning. Like we didn't have a big team. We were just like pretending to see somebody else. Like, yes, this is Tom. Like even though we know they just called, it's just like a weird thing. Like, but it's like so crazy because like it just proved that concept that people want to search for options, even though like you're like, hey, like we have a great price. People still like that idea of like making a decision. So for us, that was super helpful. And I always tell people like, how can you apply that to your space? And obviously SEO is a great one to think about for there. It's like the top 10 spots. So then we did that for my second company, which is a outdoor gear company. Mountain, we sell trekking poles. So we did that too. But then for Chester, fast forwarding, this was about maybe another year after that, is we still took those learnings. So what year
are we in at this point?
This was about 3 years ago for Chester. So a lot of people sell, kind of what you're saying before, Tanner, a lot of people do paid traffic, and Shopify is great for that. But I think if you're really, at least for me, I've always been SEO focused on these e-commerce companies. I always started with WordPress. And yes, there's good and bad about WordPress, but I think like for me, I wanted SEO to be a big part of the business, not just paid. So I built my sites with WordPress and WooCommerce. And the reason why I did that is because you can really control the URLs. In SEO or any sort of organic traffic, controlling the URLs is super important. With Shopify, you can do some, but they insert their own like /shop, /products, stuff that you can't really customize. And if you're not doing organic, that's perfectly fine. But for me, I'm like, I was like, oh, this is ugly. Like, this is just like, oh, this is so ugly. I don't want that URL there. And having that URL slug in the top is so important for the traffic. So I think like if you really want to think about SEO, I think WooCommerce is a great platform, and of course that's WordPress, so they all own that sort of thing. I mean it's all free too, so that's another benefit of it if you're looking to that. But Shopify is great, and then really for at this time I was learning more about like keyword research. I think the most important thing you have to do for organic traffic is when you're thinking about this is keyword research. Or most people when they have a product or they come up with something, they kind of like think about the name. I mostly go to Google and go to Keyword Planner. It's a Google Keyword Planner. It's a free tool, and you can type in your product like travel carry-on luggage, and you can see like the search volume. And then for us, when we see that, we will then make a page called like chestertravels.com/carry-on luggage, because that's like, and then we'll rank that sub page. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I made in the beginning was try to rank the homepage, but the homepage is more of like a general page. I tell people it's just kind of like explore your brand, think about it. But then when you're trying to rank pages, rank your sub pages, because if you have the keyword in that URL, sometimes people call it slug too. You can really now drive links or traffic to that sub page, and then that will rank up. And also it also really depends too on what the niche or specific sector is ranking. So I always tell people, Google for something like, let's say, for example, carry-on luggage, and see what the top 10 are ranking, and then just take notes saying, okay, they have like an H1. oh, they have an image here. Oh, this page has 3 images. Oh, this page has 4 paragraphs. Take notes of that and see what the commonalities are between the top 10, because you're seeing that what Google likes to rank. A lot of times it's like anything. It's like, just make it exact. Smart. Yeah, just make it simple. If Google's ranking this number 1, okay, just make your page the same thing. like I just tell people, like, don't even try to reinvent the wheel. I was just like, just the same thing.
So let's pause for a second and dig a little deeper into what you mean by a subpage. Are you doing a pure content page? Are you doing a specialized product page, or just an offer page? Or what are you calling a subpage that you're ranking for, like specifically chestertravels.com/carry-on luggage?
So for that, I tell people, make that a new page and not your product page. Your product page should be like your own thing. This should be a page that you can customize and just make specifically for SEO. And the reason why it's because this page is probably going to be very text heavy, and it's not going to be a great sort of conversion page essentially. And plus, in the beginning, you really don't want to worry about too much about conversions until you're maybe ranking 1 or 2. Once you're 1 or 2 or even 3, then you start adding all those like buttons about buy now, your luggages, because in the beginning, you really want to tell Google, like, hey, this is a product that I want to rank for. And then you go in and optimize it. Where in the beginning, I only want to rank up. And
that's
what
go ahead. Finish your thought. I just want to make sure we hit on this. So go ahead.
And I like using either pages, or even what's really working really well right now is blog posts. And the reason why I say blog posts is because with a blog post, you get like this last updated at, and Google likes fresh content. So if you can keep that updated, you can sort of show up higher.
So the posts are actually acting as the fresh content, whereas a page is considered more static. Yep. Posts have a little bit more weight because they're typically fresher and more current. Okay. So guys, what I want to talk about real quick, I want to just drive this point home, because this is a very common thing when it comes to SEO, is people try to rank specifically their product pages. They want to get each individual specific product page to rank. And where that comes from a lot of times is people are like, well, Amazon's product pages rank. Well, that's because they're Amazon. They control 53 cents of every dollar spent online. You don't. So what Kevin is talking about here is leave the product page alone. That way it can stay completely optimized for your paid traffic and for everything else. Develop sub pages that can hit on each of these different specific keywords. And we'll touch more on keywords in a second. I want to dig deeper on that. But I want you guys to really pay attention to what he said here. And if you have to go back and listen again, because that's the critical difference between being able to really generate traffic from an SEO perspective, right?
Yep. Cool. Exactly. And yeah, and like even what you said before with the pages, it's so important. And just like, I think what's important is just think about the structure of it in your mind. Just like I would tell people, like, map it out. So for Montum, we have like tracking polls, which it's like montum.com/ I wish I owned montum.com. It's just like that's not my domain, but Montum Life is the domain name. Montum.com/ trekking polls. So that's like the trekking polls category. So then we have content related to trekking polls there, about like 1,000 or 2,000 words. And I think the question people ask is like, how long should it be? Again, going back to what I said before, go to the top 10, copy and paste it, put it into a Word doc and count the number and just tally it up and say, okay, like all of this content divided by 10, average content length is this number. And then that's how much you should be thinking about writing. And then, so on this page, it's talking about trekking polls. So I have like a content about why trekking polls, why you need them, what they're useful for, when do you use them, common uses for them. And then after this, I have trekking polls / carbon fiber. So basically now we're trying to rank for carbon fiber tracking polls.
So it's category, then new keyword.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask next.
And the reason why I like that is because once you start building links to the category, you can then pass in your link juice to your subcategories, which is like your carbon fiber, and vice versa. When you start linking to the carbon fiber, you will then pass the link to your main parent category page as well. And you can, so for us, it's like we have trekking polls / carbon fiber, trekking polls / folding polls, which is another one, trekking polls / aluminum. So you can see how like now you're sort of making this sort of like mapping of the keywords and the products in your site.
Now, when we're going back to keywords, like obviously, carry-on luggage, hard-sided luggage, all those different ones. Now, guys, we're talking about luggage because Chester Travels, when I was joking about him making it hard on himself, it's a luggage company. They sell hard-sided travel luggage from a carry-on size up to a big, checked bag size, 3 basic sizes. which if you guys know Ecom, right?
Yeah.
He's got big shipping, it's big volume size, everything just becomes more complicated. And so anyway, that's what we're talking about here. So with Chester Travels though, when you guys do your keywords, like obviously some of the keyword planner tools are going to spit out things like carry-on luggage for sale.
Mm-hmm.
Do you build a page that says carry-on luggage for sale, or do you go into those like longer tail, more?
Yeah.
Because there's a thought process to that. Like people think, oh, that's a buyer's keyword versus
Yeah.
informational keyword. So what do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
So for those, if it's a buyer's keyword where you know there's people that want to buy, I tell people you should make one. And so you should do like carry-on luggage for sale, make one about it. But really, I would say like make that for a little bit. And then once you start getting traffic, go a little deeper, such as like best carry-on luggage. And then come back to that old page that you was ranking and then just do a redirect back to your parent page, which is the one that you want to do. Because by then you want to build up like your SEO juice. Kind of what you said before. It's like, you can't be Amazon like now. Like you're just like Amazon like 20 years ago where like they don't have enough, they don't have like any power.
Yeah,
Any juice. Yeah. So it's like, okay, start off with the ones that you could rank for, build them up, get some traffic, and then make, okay, this is working. Now let's make a best carry-on page. And then let's redirect the old one to this new one. That way we can get the new one ranking.
Now, when it comes to redirecting, there's a specific type of redirect you have to do, right? Because otherwise it doesn't pass on and it causes problems, right?
Yeah, you would do like a 301 redirect.
Okay.
Yeah, and then do a 301 redirect, and then make sure that like any old links, when you do your 301 redirect, make sure you're redirecting the one without the slash and like the trailing slash. So it's like technically there are two URLs, but you want to make sure that you can do that. Yeah. Okay. And that's how I would think about it too for that. But basically, sometimes in the beginning, it is better to rank for these like lower keywords, because the best carry-on luggage, even for me, like we've been trying to rank for that for like a year. And it's like, we're still on page 2. I'm just like, so like now we're just like, okay, we've been waiting for a long time. So then we just made best cheap luggage. So we're like, okay, let's try that one now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So that's how we think about it. But
no, finish your thought.
Yeah. So basically, like kind of what you said before, like the best of keywords, those are always the best ones you should rank for. Even for people for like Chester, people are like, oh, why are you ranking for best carry-on luggage? Like, of course you're gonna put your own. I'm like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I put my own? Like, I don't leave anything to chance. I was like, it's my company. I want to make sure people know, like, we think we're the best because I believe in my product. I believe in my company. So I think it's very great to sort of control the space and narrative in that SEO, especially going back to what I said before. It's like, if you can control the top 10, why wouldn't you? Why would you leave it up to chance of like a random blogger saying that you're not good? So,
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So on that point, so we're talking specific, I want to keep going into on page, but we're talking a lot about on page stuff. But if you have, Google's not going to give 10 spots to the same URL, right? Yep. Or even the same root domain. They're going to mix it up a little bit. So how big is offsite or ancillary SEO in your repertoire? How is that a big thing?
Yeah, I think even though on page and getting your SEO right and the URLs right, I still think the off page is probably the most important part of it. Okay. And that is getting links from other bloggers, and getting a link from other bloggers, that you can get that from different ways. It's either through referral traffic, as in like, hey, if you write a link to me, I'll give you a commission for every sale you make. That's another link. That's a great way to get links because it's like a 2-for-1 deal. They'll write a review about you, and also you'll get linked to your website.
So does the affiliate link actually pass link juice back to you, even though it's got its own, funny? Yeah.
So what you could do is, if usually it's like, for us, it's like chestertravels.com/ref, right? And then you have like a random thing. So when you do that, you can just let it go directly to the referral. But then what you want to do is go into your backend. There's like a file called like Htaccess, which is like the thing. You can then say, hey, if you detect Googlebot, redirect it to the homepage. That way you can strip out that /ref stuff.
Got it.
More technical, but like you can do that, especially if you have a lot of links.
Yeah, and honestly, editing the Htaccess is not that hard. It's open it in Notepad, add a line. I mean, it's fairly straightforward. I mean, don't hack at it. If you watch a couple YouTube videos at the very least before you start hacking at it, but it's not that hard to edit.
Yeah, so that's how you should do it. And in order to, because you said you want to preserve every link juice you can. Like, always be looking at like your Webmaster Tools. The most basic thing that you can install is Webmaster Tools, and Google will tell you like what's wrong with your site, and then just
Mhm.
fix it. Right? So because Google's really telling you those insights there.
Absolutely. So with those external links, obviously getting links from bloggers and things like that. Now, what we see a lot of, and I actually don't know the true answer to this. We don't like it, but people do it, and that is the using like Blogger and all these different like free link things. And my perspective on it is whether it gives you link juice or not, it devalues the brand, and it's not worth it. I don't want that image hit taken, so we recommend not doing it. But is that actually beneficial to your SEO?
So for like any of those free sites like Blogger or like those free WordPress sites,
Where they
like
just basically spam and links, right?
yeah, those don't work anymore. It used to work. Definitely 10 years ago, that was great. But now it
Yeah.
doesn't work. I think Google's gotten a lot smarter than that. Really, when you want to think about SEO, it's like you want to be actually doing true outreach, right? Kind of like going out to the blogger and saying, hey, look, my name is Kevin. I have Chester Travels. Love for you to write a review about me. We'll love to maybe do a sponsored post. And there's so many ways you could do that. Let's say, obviously there's so many travel bloggers, so there's a lot of angles for Chester that we use, such as
Mm-hmm.
traveling to this country, traveling to this, the best carry-on luggage. There's so many, but even for any space, you can really be creative of how you want to pitch your product, and anything like that. It's just, again, you can also go back to like these sort of keyword planner tools and see like, hey, what are other keywords in like the travel space, and then reach out to those bloggers and go from there. And once you're thinking about this, it sounds like a lot, but really what you want to do is think about it as like a process. And honestly, the best way that you could do it is use a tool like, I'm not sure if you guys heard, like Ahrefs,
Mm-hmm.
ahrefs.com.
Yep.
What you could do is go to a competitor's website that you know is ranking well, and then just look at where they're getting links from, and then just have your virtual assistant contact everybody on that list and just say, hey, we know that we saw that you wrote about Chester Travels. Can you write about us? It's like, okay, cool. And the thing about it too is like the insight here that you should be thinking about is like, hey, they're already open to guest posting. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a less of a sell. It's not like you're educating on them on like why you need this. It's like they
Correct.
kind of know.
Yep.
Yeah.
And guys, I want to touch on this for a second in a little bit different way, but he's talking about a very manual process, and he did talk about a VA, but I want to imply and just how easy that really is. And I mean, you're talking a $4 to $5 an hour Filipino VA, or maybe an $8 an hour highly paid one, and this kind of repetitive systemized task, all you do is you go through it once, you map out exactly how you want to do it. You give them the templated form emails where they can replace the stuff that you want, and they just do it by the droves, by the hundreds. We did this back in the early days, back in like 2002 and 3, when we were looking for affiliates. We would basically, I had 2 VAs whose job all day long was just to Google search every possible combination of words they could, find sites, send them an email asking them if they would basically want to be an affiliate for XYZ product, and we would, pay them a commission. It was very, very low success rate, but we found some of our best super affiliates by doing that. But ultimately, I'd spend $300 to $400 a month on these VAs doing this, and I would get, it's probably a 1 in 20 successful affiliate came through from that. But those were affiliates I wouldn't have had before. And it was, once I set them up and doing it, it was completely hands-free. And it's the same thing that Kevin's talking about here. You're asking for links, you're asking for guest posts. You can basically, and then you can have a variation on it. If they run out of things to ask for guest posts on, okay, go over here and try to buy a link, try to do this. There's just a multi-step process you can easily set up, right?
Exactly. It's like I tell people all the time, it sounds like a lot of manual work, but just record yourself doing it once and say, watch this video, and then you'll never have to do it again. And exactly what you said, I think what you said there is so important. It's like, you can ask for a guest post. Sometimes they'll say no and be like, okay, well, what's another way we can work together? And use that contact to say like, okay, can I buy a link, or can we do a swap, or can I do a banner ad? Just be creative about it. And even with like, if you're doing paid traffic, I know a lot of people do Facebook ads here, is sometimes what we've done too is like, hey, like, what about, can I place my pixel on your blog? Because I see you have a lot of organic traffic yourself. And then you can use that yourself as retargeting to your stuff. So that's another way to do it. It's like, once you have this like industry contacts, you can then use it. For example, we did a lot of guest posting with Montam, right? So all the people that we successfully guest posted on, we said, hey, we actually started a second brand. They're like, okay, cool. Yeah, I like your stuff. So I think people need to think about it as like, as just like a database of contacts. It's just like when people, it's like, oh, like once that you've done it once and it's successful, the second time is so much easier because they know that you've actually delivered that first time. So
Absolutely. No, super strong thing to do. Very manual, but again, have a VA do it and it's worth its weight. So let's jump back into keywords specific. I think
yep.
people screw up keywords a lot because they think just because the Google keyword tool returns these as possible searches, then I need to focus on all of these. So talk a little bit about how when you do a Google keyword search on like the planner tool or whatever, how do you kind of judge and eliminate and, triage that list?
Yeah. So for us, when we're first starting SEO, we kind of like to go and think about like kind of problems that people are searching for online. For at least for Chester, a lot of the keywords that we started to rank for were like how early should I arrive at the airport? A very common question that people ask. So when we are sort of filtering through Google, we just filter through like how, what, when, if. Those I think are very much easier to rank for, and they're also helping people solve a problem. And then you can then retarget them or use other stuff. But for us, what we did, at least for Chester, was one of the biggest things that we rank for is kind of like baggage fees. And when we do baggage fees, we saw that there was like hundreds of variations of this. So for example, like Avianca Airlines baggage fees, Delta Airlines baggage fees.
Mm-hmm.
So all these pages now have their own page, blog posts on our website. And this gets us so much traffic because we know that they're about to travel and they're looking for like this pain point of traveling, which is a baggage fee. And that fits directly with our product, saying, hey,
Right,
look,
yeah.
with the carry-on, you don't have to pay for a baggage fee. So that's how it goes back to what I said before. Now you can insert your product.
And do a soft pitch back to your carry-on size luggage.
Yep, exactly. And then we say, hey, but if you want to pay for if you want to pay for like a fee, we also have bigger ones that you can also use too. And it's like this pain point, we call it like pain point SEO, where it's like, where does your product fit? And then that's what we rank for. And for us, what we did was, at least when I'm doing any SEO, I'll do like 3 to 4 of these sort of keywords and kind of see what Google's giving me. And if it's like, I'm like, oh, wow, it's actually pretty good. Then I'll go and build like a whole matrix of like
what time frame do you consider when you're like judging whether or not you should build out more or whatever?
I usually give it like 2 months or so. But again, it really depends on how powerful your domain is, right? If you just started out, it's too little. So you just need to keep the first few months of SEO, you probably know, it's like, you're kind of just grinding it out. It's like, oh my God, like, I don't know if this thing works. Like you're like praying every night, like, is it going to work? Is it going to work? Is it going to work? And then eventually something happens. You're like, oh, okay, cool. It's working. And then like, you're like, oh, then you're like, why didn't I build more blog posts? Like,
I wish I'd been building more of those earlier.
Yeah. So it's always one of those things where once it works, it works. And that's why SEO, I think, is so tough sometimes, because you're just spending money. Like, like I said, like, yes, you can do all this outreach, guest posting. That does cost money. So I understand where people are skeptical about it. But I think it's so like, I do paid traffic as my agency. SEO is still the best thing that you could be doing, because it's like, once it works, it works. And I tell people like, it's going to take a year or two, but keep at it.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's honestly one of the best additions you can add to a paid traffic strategy, because it helps level out the hiccups that happen across, the paid media. And it's once it's there, it's just such a nice, padding to your bottom line, because your acquisition, there is an acquisition cost, but it's fairly difficult to calculate that. So you kind of look at your organic as like a free sale almost, right? Yeah. Because it's all sunk cost versus, direct acquisition cost. So no, for sure. But I want to actually dig in, or bring to the surface and dig in a little bit more on one point you made. So guys, think about SEO. When you think about SEO for your products, typically you're like, Samsung phone for sale, blue Samsung phone, gold Samsung phone. If you listen to what Kevin said, for his travel site, which sells luggage, the keywords he started talking about were baggage fees and, what time to arrive at the airport. This is a very wide SEO net, right? You think about it, he's from like a paid media targeting, he went from laser targeted direct response to very, very broad, almost no targeting, right? He's really casting that wide net and letting people self-select. So from SEO, that direct keyword stuff is good, but if you want to go from 0 to 60K like they did really fast, you're going to have to get creative and start casting a much, much wider net in the keywords you're looking at, and then get super creative. Like, hey, baggage fees. Well, I sell luggage, or I don't, but Kevin sells luggage, right? Kevin sells luggage, baggage fees are a perfect fit. And as he already mentioned, it ties it in. How can you do that with your product? Because those keywords are going to be much easier to rank for, I'm betting, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, than blue Samsung Galaxy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like those best of keywords are going to be very, very tough to rank for. And of course, those like the best ones you want to, and everybody wants to be number one. But I say before, I go for those how-tos, what's, those are questions. People are looking for those much more than what is the best X, Y, and Z. There's only certain categories that best ranks high. But yeah, like even for us too, we have like do's and don'ts for flying coach. How to use the airline bathroom stall. Like what is the what is the mile high club? Like all this stuff, right? Like all this like kind of things in that space that kind of get people thinking about like, who is this brand, right? And you can be very creative, and sometimes it's fun to write the content. I mean, we don't write it, but you can write it yourself.
Yeah, totally.
So
with that, hang on. You're talking about a ton of stuff. So specifically let's stick with Chester Travel. And during this 0 to 60K ramp up, monthly visitor ramp up, how many pages did you guys create in that time frame? Like how many different pages did you have out there?
So for us, for Chester, to get to there, we were mainly ranking with that baggage fee one. So once we saw that working, two things here. It's like we saw it working, and then we created about 30 to 40 different pages. Okay. And with that, one of the key things I think people need to do too is like once you see this working, it's just to interlink between those pages. Is your one baggage fee page to another one, and making sure that like the Google crawler can come back and find the other ones too. Because one of the mistakes that people make is like they'll write a page, let's say today, and then a month from now they have another page. They should go back to today and be like, oh, let me link to that new page. So like I said, it's like a manual work, but again, you can have a VA or somebody in your team be like, hey, whenever we make a new page, find one that we wrote a month ago and link it to this new one.
That's like deep linking.
Yeah, deep linking. Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and actually with our blog, that's one of the things that we realized we weren't doing. And then we have all of our content interrelates, and it's like, why? We knew to do it. We just didn't do it. So, but we've seen a big lift in the blog itself since we started going back and just updating all that deep linking. So I'm glad you said that it was like 30 to 40 pages, because in my head, the story I'm telling myself, I'm like, oh my God, they've got thousands of pages out there to generate this much traffic, but that's cool. So again, so it's dive deep once you find something that works, and interlink, right? Exactly, interlink.
And then it's like interesting because people could be like, oh, like Delta airline baggage fees, or like, Southwest airline. You can make that to like one page, but I don't think that's as effective as making many pages. And one thing you'll probably realize is people like, oh, I can just make that one page because you want to save on content costs, so you can just like easily add the other ones. But for me, I'm just like, no, I know it's worth the extra $300 per page, because I know I'm going to rank more and get more traffic this way.
Totally. On that, so like our whole preface is revenue optimization. That's what Build, Grow, Scale does, but it all focuses on the buyer's journey and streamlining that buyer's journey. And what's the best for the customer? What's the best for the visitor, right? And what you're talking about is what's best for the visitor. Even if you have one page of content with all of that on there, and let's just say the SEO juice was equal, it's still not the best thing for the customer, because if they want Zimbabwe Air, they have to go through all the other letters of the airline alphabet before they get to it. They don't want to do that. They want to go right to it. So you breaking it out into individual pages allows them to rank, or it allows it to rank. When they click on it, it gives them exactly what they want, versus making them look for the information, which is something people do on stores all the time. Is like they can find it. That's not their job to find it. It's your job to make it easy for them to find it.
Yeah, just like making the collection super simple, and I think too, it's like with SEO, one thing you'll learn is a lot of at least people I talk to, it's like they want to name their product something random. I'm just like, that's not what people call it though. And I'm like, just call it what people want to call it. And I'm just like, oh my God. It's like, I see it all the time. Like, I have no clue how people are ever going to find you online because your name is made up. I'm just like, Even for
Yeah.
us, like our polls are called like quantum trucking polls. I'm like, because I want the keyword in there for SEO.
Yep.
So yeah.
It
So
makes
that's
total
another one.
sense though.
Yeah.
Because again, the user is not you.
Yeah.
And we talk about this all the time as we talk about the fact that as soon as you become, like, you could be a mountain biker, but the second you decide to become a mountain biking vendor or you're selling something in the mountain biking space, you are no longer your target audience because you have a mental shift in your head that's different from the just pure passion play, right? So that's it. Like, I want to be creative and it will be so cool. But that's not what the original old you mountain biker would have done. If that's what the
Yeah.
new messed up business you wants to do.
Yep.
So yeah, it's keeping it good for that. So back to what we're talking about with these pages for a second. We've talked about, a little bit about structure on a light point, but what I want to get to is, and what everybody really cares about is, how do I make money off those pages? So generating traffic to baggage fees, we talked a little bit about how you can do like a soft link back, but how do you do your promotion on these SEO'd pages? And how do you get them back to your product pages or category pages?
What we have is we have a good table of contents. On these pages, we also have a pop-up where people can put in their email to get more people to their email. Email list is probably one of the biggest things that you could probably do to just, because if you're driving traffic, a lot of traffic is informational traffic. So at least get them in an email to say, hey, look, we can get like $10 off the next luggage. But even better, sometimes what we've tried this for other company is like giving an ebook that works really well related to the content. But for us, what we're doing for Chester is like every third or fourth paragraph, we do have a CTA that says, are you interested in getting a luggage? Here, shop now. And then we take them to our category page of luggages.
Now, is that a visual CTA or is it more of just a text-based?
It's a visual CTA. So it's like a button that says shop Chester. And then on top, we have a little text on top. So we have that about the 4 paragraphs from the top. And also we have one on the bottom as well. And so
are you demoing or showing on that button, are there pictures of your carry-on product or anything like that? Or is it just a button without product imagery?
Yeah, it's just a button without product imagery. Okay. But like I said before, sometimes it might be better to also add like an image next to it with the button. But yeah, for us, we just have the button. And depending on like what WordPress theme you might have, or there's like plugins that says like every 4th paragraph add like dynamic content.
Correct.
That makes it very easy to do. Yep.
Now, obviously you have that every 4th. Do you do any kind of, straight text linking back to product?
Yeah. So we also do straight text linking as well. And that serves 2 purposes. That's sort of like internal SEO. And then also just like kind of like just showing people the product. But another thing that we also do too, which I think is maybe more for like the paid guys, is making sure that you have your pixel on these pages. And then we do retargeting on the blog posts. So it's huge. It's just big. That's really one of the bigger things about it. It's like you could retarget people because they were on like this travel site. So they're kind of thinking about this travel space, and that helps with retargeting for Google ads, retargeting for Facebook ads. But also, again, you can also use this like traffic for like lookalike audiences if you're doing Facebook ads as well.
Cool. Now back to the content. We talked about every 4th paragraph or so, you have the link calling them back. You've obviously got H1 tags. Is there like a rule of thumb, like how many H1, how many H2s, what's the word count? Like, is there a basic structure that you like to follow?
Yeah. So H1, always have only one H1. I think it's probably the most important thing. Your H1 should also probably match your title tag, which is like the thing in the back end. And then H2, I like to have 1 or 2 H2s and then an H3. And the reason why I like to do that is because you want to have like a good, what I'm seeing now, which is working really, really well, is called like a table of contents. So you see kind of like a little, kind of like Wikipedia. You know how Wikipedia has like the table of contents? A lot of websites have that now. And I'm seeing that work really well for ranking on Google. So if you go for anything Chester site, you see that after the 2nd paragraph, we have a little table of contents. And that's just automatically generated with the structure that was in before, like an H1, H2, H3, and an H4. Usually you want to have like 2 to 3 H2s, 2 to 3 H3s, and then 1 H4. But it's always like, depending on how you visually want to show it. So that's how I think about it. But H1 should be like kind of like the title of the blog post. So for example, it could be like Avianca Airlines baggage fees. H2 could be another question you want to answer, kind of like a sub, going back to the keyword research, like that's just like the main one. And then like the H2s and H3s are like sub questions of that main keyword that you want to rank for as well. Like, so like people call them like secondary keywords.
Yep.
So,
okay. And then in terms of total length, is there a rule of thumb there?
No, so for that, I use this program called Surfer SEO, and it's
Okay.
and basically kind of what I said before, where you want to look at the top 10, they
Yep.
will do that for you automatically. It's pretty expensive, but I think it's worth it. So let's say you're putting in like luggage fees, they'll take the top 10 and tell you like, hey, Kevin, here's how long your article should be, and here's what
Oh.
your H2 and H3 should be.
So it's more niche and topic / keyword specific. So it
Yep.
could be same niche, but each keyword has a different length based
Exactly.
on the top 10. Interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. So this tool does that, and I think it's probably one of the best tools. And you don't like any SaaS program. Just do it for like a month and like download everything, and then just save it, and then like okay, like go write down the articles. So use that as a way. But for me, I just kind of get it every month. So every keyword is a little different. So I always tell people like just look at what the tool's telling you, or just like again manually do it yourself.
Very cool. All right. So we've kind of covered a big push on this. I've got two things I still want to talk to you. I want to talk about Chester Travels a little bit and kind of what you've learned from that. But before we do that, so a lot of the people who are listening to this are like, dude, this is awesome. I'm learning a lot, but I have no SEO on my site whatsoever right now. I don't even know where to start. So someone like that, talk to that a little bit. What would you tell that person, and how could they kind of get their feet wet and get a plan going?
I think the number one thing you want to be doing is think about starting a blog. A blog is probably the first thing you should be starting. Shopify, you can do a blog. WordPress, of course, is a blog. And then really, I would say like learn about SEO. Some of the best blogs out there for SEO are probably like, it's called like Backlinko by Brian Dean.
Mm-hmm.
He's pretty
good.
good.
I've seen that one.
And then SEO Moz, still like he's like Rand Fishkin is pretty good. And then best one out there though is Ahrefs.com. They have a good blog, and they really show you that stuff. So I think like people need to truly understand what the blog can do for you, and sort of like the content for you. But then just Google stuff. Obviously, it's like anything. Just Google things you want to rank for and see like, what are they doing? How are they ranking? What's the structure they're using, and then just test. It's like paid traffic. You got to test. Like for me, the way I did it, like Chester's probably like my 30th blog I've done. So like, I know like the structure. Yeah.
Yep.
So like
you got your 10,000 hours in already.
So I used to do a lot of like affiliate SEO too for like Amazon, like best blah, blah, blah. So I learned a lot of SEO that way.
Yep.
And
I used
then,
to do that too.
Yeah. So yeah. So I used to do that too until I got banned by Amazon. So I tell people like, if you're really cautious about your brand and you don't want to mess up your SEO, make a second blog and then just use that as testing, and then start getting your feet wet. Like, okay, how do you install Google Webmaster Tools? How can I rank for this random keyword? How long should it be? Use that as a way to test. And the way to think about it's like, I know people are like, oh, it's going to be expensive, but it's like education. You got to spend money to learn.
100%.
And if you don't spend money, then you'll never know. You'll always be guessing. And then guessing is worse than never doing. And that's why, like, I just love experimenting, because then I can read. I mean, you probably know, you can read, you can watch all you want, but seeing is believing. You're like, oh crap, this actually works. You're like, okay, I want to do more. Yeah. So that's where I would start. But again, two ways: either from your own blog, because if you have some SEO juice, or really make a secondary blog that's just purely for testing. And that's the way I would think about it. But again, there's so many tools out there like Keyword Planner, Ahrefs. I would say you should get that. The best tool out there. It's really expensive though, so I'm not saying it's cheap. It's about $150 or $200 a month. But really, with that tool, you can put in any domain you want, and you can see what they're ranking for, and then you can see how many links they're getting. So that should give you a gauge of like how much SEO you should be doing.
Yeah, and honestly, guys, he says 150 a month, and this is something we talk about all the time when people are asking us about apps or themes or crap like that. They're like, well, how much does it cost? It's the wrong question. Okay. It's never about how much it's going to cost. It's number one, are you committed to using it? And if you use it and it's part of your strategy, then it can be worth it. And then what's your ROI going to be on it? It's not what if this doesn't work, it's what if this does work? And just like anything. So if you're going to buy the tool and then half-ass it, yeah, of course it's not worth the money. But if you're going to commit to like, hey, like we both said, SEO is a year plus plan, right? Then if you're willing to commit to that consistency, then yeah, those tools are worth it. Just like with an app, if you're not going to use it, then the app's worthless. If you're not going to configure it right or test and tweak, it's not worth it. But if you're going to put the time in to do it right, then yeah, of course it's worth it. And it's going to ROI for you.
Yeah. Ahrefs, like I use it every day. It's like the best too. I'm like, well, it's like 150 for most people. I'm like, oh, it's kind of cheap for me. So I don't know. It's like, because it gets me the traffic I want. It gives me everything I ever need. And I'm just like, it's crazy that it's only 150. So that's my
Yeah, and
mentality. It's like, yeah.
you put it exactly. If it gets me to 60,000 uniques a month, organic, am I willing to spend $150 a month? Yeah,
And yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And I think with like any, I mean, you probably know too, Tanner. It's like with apps, I'm like 150. I'm like, I spend that like eating out at night. I'm just like, but
Yep.
yeah, then I complain. It's like, this is so crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
we have those weird things. We'll spend money on some things, but we get like, I'm not going to spend $8 on a pair of socks. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But you spend $8
Just,
on a coffee.
I was like, I just got coffee twice. I'm just like, that was $10. I was just like,
Yeah,
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
All right, so now I'm going to put you to the fire a little bit. Let's talk specifically Chester Travel, because you've got your trekking pole company, you've got Chester Travel, and I know you're working on a new supplement company as well, which as we talked offline a little bit, it was more about like, man, we learned a lot from Chester Travel. We're going this way. So what are some of what did you like big takeaways you learned building a luggage company online?
The biggest takeaway for Chester that we did was everything on Chester was custom, which was great. Whereas Montum, for example, was kind of like traditional what people do. It's like you find a supplier and then you can kind of slap your label on it with some
Private label,
configuration. Yep. With Chester, we didn't want to do that because we learned from Montum. It's like any business. You learn a little bit. Yeah. So we didn't want to do that because we saw competitors were coming to the space so easily. Whereas for Chester, we said, hey, we want to make something custom and something large because most competitors don't have the capital or have the time or resource to do something like this. And we saw that. So we're like, okay, let's go find a great supplier that isn't going to be like, can you copy this brand? We wanted to just do it custom. So for Chester, it took us 6 months to make. And the mold itself was like $75K. That's why for Chester, we only sold the carry-on for the first year because we didn't have money to make the second one. It was too expensive. For Chester, we learned so much. We learned about like manufacturing custom stuff, we manufacture with other suppliers. So we work with the YKK factory to make the custom zippers. So if you look at the Chester zippers, it's like a custom C that clips together and makes a C. Everything inside, it's custom lining. The first Chester, if you look at it now, it's like a gray lining. The first one was blue. And we're just like, oh, people are going to love blue. And it was just like, no one bought it. So we had to put those on sale. And then we get like, yeah, it's like, I don't know.
We'll
we're
go
just
more
like,
neutral.
Oh, yeah, we'll go more exactly. It's like, yeah, I tell people it's like, it's a process. I'm like, I thought it was going to be good. And then we put it online. We're like, why is it blue? I'm just like, I thought it'd be different than most people. So we tried it. And then now we made it more neutral. Yeah.
That's funny because like I avoided Toomey luggage for years because it was orange. It had that on the inside. It had all that orange stuff. And then my business partner bought me one, and it was. I was like, I opened it up. It was all gray, and I was like, okay, cool. I just didn't want that bright orange. So I totally get it. Okay, so yeah, you did the custom route, which is awesome. We could have some conversation about it because I did the same thing. I ground up designed a tactical flashlight because I was in the gun space, and I learned a lot from that. But I wanted to share a little story with you about the mold. So my experience with molds pre to Ecom was like my dad's friend owned an injection molding company. He would charge like 150 grand to make a mold. So I was like, oh my God, molds are big money. And obviously yours was 75K. And so we were doing back in the Facebook page days when Facebook organic was huge, right? And everybody was building these massive pages. We had pages on everything from Duck Dynasty to Siberian Huskies, pit bulls, guns, Second Amendment, everything, right? Like millions, moms, all that stuff, right? And one of the ones that we were monetizing really effectively was dogs. What we did was we went and found a necklace that we liked, and we came up with this Siberian Husky design pendant, right?
I love Huskies.
Yeah, for Huskies. And it was like a rhodium plated costume jewelry, like higher end, but not all the way up to sterling silver. And it was going to be like sell for 24, 25 bucks. Well, to produce these at quality, we had to have a consistent quality. We needed to have a nice mold made. And as soon as the supplier's like, well, let me get you a quote on the mold, I shut down. I stopped talking to him. I got scared and I never talked to him again for like months and months and months. And I was on stage talking about this product and this story and how I didn't ever follow through with it and whatnot. And they're like, well, how much did the mold actually cost? I'm like, I don't actually know. I never went back to him. So I finally went back to him
Yeah.
And I said, hey, by the way, sorry, the communication broke down. My fault. How much is the mold? It's 150 bucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? And my unit cost was like sub $1. I was landing them in the US for less than $1, and thousands of them in one little air freight box. And we were able to sell tens and tens of thousands of them. But yeah, it's just funny because you said mold, and I even had, like, as you said it, I was like, I just had this weird irrational fear around the mold costs.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's like sometimes they're so expensive, but for us, we saw that price too. We're like, whoa, like, and then we're just like, okay, we got to go all in. It's like, we think
also a barrier to entry to your competitors too, right?
And that's probably one of the biggest reasons why we saw it's a barrier to entry. And we're just like, okay, let's do it. We think that there's potential. And like, people are like, how did you know? I'm like, I don't know. Let's take a shot. I was like, it's like,
you don't actually know. You can do all the guesswork you want, right? But eventually you just have to go for it.
Yeah, I'm just like, based on like, it's kind of before it's stair step. Based on all the stuff I've done before, I'm like, I at least think I have the knowledge and the skills to make my money back. And I think a lot of it, like anything, Tanner, you probably know, it's like self-belief. Like I think 100%. I could do it. And it's all like mindset. I'm like,
and if I don't, it's a loss. I'll learn from it and I'll make it back somewhere else.
And that's exactly what he said. Like, I was like, hey, if we don't make any money back, all right, at least we learned something. And that's sort of like, that's the way I think about things.
So with Chester, like I wanted to touch on the shipping aspect because we were joking about that before the show. Talk about like, you're like, oh craps with shipping and like, and just product size and all that.
Shipping with Chester we can't do air freight. Like I would love to do air freight, but that's like massive. And like, you can only ship like a certain amount. We always have to do both. Like that's even when we first started, shipping. Always container shipping. So when we had the carry-on luggage, it was really expensive because it was only the carry-on. But after we started selling the bigger sizes, we told our supplier, hey, start packing them inside.
Yeah,
so then we started stack them. Yeah. So then we saved more money. But even then, it's super, super expensive. Like we were working with like a warehouse here in Brooklyn called ShipBob. And it's really expensive to just ship them out. It's almost like $20, $30, sometimes even more to ship it out. So we really try to tell people like buy the bundles because then we could save, 20, 30 bucks on that. But even for us, like we were using ShipBob for a really long time. And then we just saw the costs were going too high. So then we started using, obviously people know you can sell on Amazon through like the FBA, but you can also just use their fulfillment services to mail stuff out.
And link it up to your stores.
Yeah, exactly. And that was much cheaper. And we're just like, we just sent everything to Amazon now. But now, no one's buying luggages. We have long-term storage fees that are just racking up at Amazon because Amazon's not forgiving about it. They're like, hey,
and you're not moving. You're not turning over, so they're not going to be nice to you.
No. So like for us, we're just like, oh man, like we need to figure stuff out. And even for returns, like this is a big piece of luggage. They return it to our office. Our office has a wall of luggages. It's like, when people come visit, I tell people, take a luggage if you want, like, cause we just have so many. But even with like returns and like this big thing, we've been able to sort of save costs because going back to kind of like maybe like a little bit of SEO stuff, when someone wants, a lot of people love the luggage because of the looks and it's expensive. So if you have an expensive product, we say, hey, look, can you give us a link? I'll give you a luggage. And then you just send them like a return one.
Why not?
So they're like, oh, I would love a luggage. And they get it. And they're like, oh, whoa, this is amazing. So use that like resources that you have. Sometimes you can just like give them stuff that you return. And luggage is so big. Sometimes we give it to my mom. I'm like, Mom, just sell them on eBay. So she's like, okay, sell them on eBay. Right? It's like,
So yeah, big products, right? There's a lot of a lot of headaches that can happen with those, and kind of what led you to your new brand, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's sort of where we just saw the shipping costs were too expensive, and just getting the logistics right just was not something like we're still doing it, of course. But obviously, it's like a bad time right now to sell luggages. We're trying to do something different and take the learnings from Chester to build our new brand, which is like we said before, supplements. And I think that's some stuff that I probably learned from like watching you guys of like the stuff that we've seen sell online, just smaller, but recurring as well.
Of course. Yeah. That consumable aspect really makes it nice for your repeat customer rate and everything. Speaking of actually repeat customer ratings, do you even know what your repeat rate is on luggage? Have you had it long enough that you can see like people coming back, or is it still more of a one-time?
Yeah, so for us, it's like more of a one-time. And when we came out with like the bigger sizes, we did send an email blast and we're promoting those. So that people did come back and buy those. But like repeat rate, we don't have that number yet. It's like too young. And there's another thing too, where we saw like the life of a customer is going to be like, they buy luggage now, and then like when's the next time they're going to buy one? Because we made our, it's like a good and bad thing. It's like you make your luggage so good that people are like, oh, this is like really good. Like, why would I need another one? It's like,
Yep.
yeah. So I can see why, like,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
kind
like,
of damned if you do, right? Make a
yeah.
good product and they don't need it again.
So yeah, it's like the shell's like super strong. It's like anti-scratch. So then like people are like, oh, this is really good. I'm just like, yeah, like now that I have one, I'm just like, I don't think I'm going to need another one anytime soon. So yeah.
Yeah, maybe your kids need one at some point, but like it's not a very consistent purchase habit.
No.
For sure. So this was a great episode. We've covered a whole bunch of awesome stuff. I love the SEO aspect because I mean, I don't know anybody else that actually talks about ecom SEO really the way you do, and actually has like tactical. It's more like, oh yeah, SEO is a long process. Just start writing. No, you're like, okay, do this, do this, do this, which I love. Now you also have your own podcast. You have Voy Media. Where can people, you guys need to be listening to his podcast for sure. I think I'm gonna do an episode with you this week or next week.
Yeah.
We're gonna do something, right?
Yeah. Tomorrow.
Actually, maybe tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's tomorrow. That's right. So that'll be cool. And then, but anyway, like how can people follow you, and what's the best way to connect with you? And why don't you summarize what Voy Media does? Because it's not what we've been talking about.
No, we don't do any SEO. So, yep, goes back to what I said before. Like, I know the value of SEO, but a lot of partners and people don't. So I'm just like, I don't want to be working with you for like a month. You'd be like, why is my traffic not increasing? I'm just like, that doesn't work with SEO. Go work with another SEO agency that can sort of do that. Here at Voy Media, we mainly do like paid ads. So Facebook ads, Instagram ads, and the creatives of them. And a lot of it has to do with like e-commerce products and just like info products as well. So that's what we do at Voy Media. And for we have a podcast called Digital Marketing Fastlane. So we try to talk about Facebook ads, of course, but also just like marketing in general. Kind of like there's so much more to marketing and running a business than just like the ads. So I try to help people like it's about everything that you're kind of doing. And then to follow me, I'm like really big on Twitter. Like as in I use it. I'm not big at all. Like no one follows me, but like
but you like it.
I like it. I'm always on Twitter. So you can follow me. It's just twitter.com/Danist. And then again, Voy Media is just voymedia.com, VOY.
So, right? Yep. Okay.
So yeah,
that's kind of cool to see a Facebook ad guy actually advocating SEO, which is, you don't hear that, which is another thing that makes it so awesome to talk to you, because you actually believe in the multi-pronged approach and everything.
Yeah. I love SEO. It's my favorite traffic source. If I could do SEO, I'd do it, but it's just like so hard to get it done.
Absolutely. It's a time taker. It just takes time, right?
Yep.
Well, Kevin, this was great. I really appreciate you being on here. And guys, make sure you follow him on Twitter. Go to voymedia.com. Check out his podcast. And speaking of podcasts, it's time to make sure you guys are subscribed to this podcast, Optimized E-commerce. We're releasing episodes every week. We've got lots of great content to share with you guys. The engagement rate from what we've been seeing has been huge. So make sure you are subscribed both on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you listen to your podcast, and then also on YouTube. This is a video podcast, so we also share stuff on our screen from time to time, do site audits or critiques and things like that, and you're going to want to be able to see that as well. So if you're on YouTube, click the subscribe button. If you're on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever, subscribe there and leave us a review. And if you need show notes or you want to get access to all the different links, go to buildgrowscale.com/podcast. It's all right there. Kevin, bro, this was fun. Thanks for
having me.
We'll see you guys later. Ciao.